Hey, this is Matt once again. What about another video? There's another paid request, this time for Kevin. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And Kevin wanted me to talk about the Arnold documentary that came out. It was a three-part documentary. Each one was about an hour long. The first hour was about him as an athlete, bodybuilding. The second hour was him as a star. And the third hour was him in politics. Now, overall, this was a fun watch, I will admit. I am a fan of Arnold. I'm not a fan of what he says lately, but I am a fan. Yeah, it was well made. It was nice to hear him talk. He still has a bit of that charisma to him with some of the stuff he says that made me laugh. And this bigger than life, I mean, you first see him in a hot tub in the outside with all the snow and mountains around him. I mean, talk about a bigger than life way to open up the thing. And funny enough, the most interesting part for me was the first hour, which was about his childhood, his dad, how strict he was, his brother, how the father would make the brothers compete with each other, even if it was just picking flowers for Mother's Day. How was and thou Austria, seeing the old Hercules movies with Reg Park, who was into bodybuilding, and training with friends by the lake, having to serve military service, having to be a tank driver, because I never knew he drove a tank. And even later on, you see him drive a tank on one of his homes. Like, he owns a tank, and you see him driving the tank. I thought that was pretty cool. He talks about Franco Colombo, who passed away, did the America in the late 60s, his first winning stuff in Austria, but then the end of America, the end of second place, think it was the end of the world. At least I do like some of Arnold's lines where it's like, okay, you cried, you little baby, you asshole. Time to get up. Going to Gold's Gym. He does admit taking steroids with doctor supervision. But it's one of those things where, okay, like that bit there, that seemed like something that we should go further on. When you took steroids at the time, do you think that affected your heart or something else later? Did that affect you? It's like it's brought up, and then we move on. And that's the thing with these type of documentaries is that, I mean, it's still three parts, it's 3 hours, that's a lot. But still, it's like, man, there's still so much missing that you kind of wish for, wow, I wish they would have done this. I wish they would have talked about that. I wish they would have gone further with that and his feelings on it at the time compared to now. And I think that could have been a bit more looked into. 1970, the end of Mr. Olympia, his bro dying while drunk driving. The thing that made me destroyed him, and his father dying, and winning all these championships, bodybuilding championships. Like I said, that was the most interesting because I didn't know about his brother. I didn't know about his military service. To learn more about the bodybuilding before pumping iron and how that all went about, it felt more fresh to me, information wise. So other than I wish a little bit here, a little bit there could have been a bit more into. It was so nice to see. It was still interesting to see, and it was well put together, with various footage from back in the day and present day, and it goes at a good pace. Never found it boring. A lot of old pictures put into there, and then old footage of his bodybuilding tournaments back to the day, and the fresh young Arnold, and you just saw just how big and massive he was. So old interview footage, which even back then showed a bit of that charisma that Arnold would carry into the movies. So that was nice to see. The second part with the movies, it was fun, but I would say it was the most disappointing of the three because there's just so much that was left out. And I think people know him most for his movie career. Let's be honest. When you think of Arnold, you think his body of work of his movies. And I mean, they do bring up Hercules and how he was not ready, and how they changed my name and they changed my voice. But like that's how we got out of it. Like I wish we could delve more into that film. They did to Stay Hungry, that film, and him getting an acting coach. They do talk a little bit about Pumping Iron, Take It to the Cannes Festival, The Villain, that movie is brought up. But again, you don't really give much depth. It's just he brings it up, and he brings up a review where someone said the horse had better acting than him. I'm pretty much saying you can't be an actor, you need to be a character actor. I do like his line, what the fuck? I don't want to be a character actor. I want to be a star. But it's kind of like, it's, like I say, it's fun to watch being put together with interviews like you have throughout this hour. Ivan Reitman, may you rest in peace, Sylvester Stallone, James Cameron, Linda Hamilton, Jamie Lee Curtis, Danny DeVito. They give their 2 cents. Because, okay, the movies talked about would be Conan, The Terminator, Twins, Terminator 2, briefly mentions Last Action Hero, True Lies. There's footage of other movies shown. Like there's footage of Collateral Damage shown, End of Days shown, but nothing's, talked about. So no, they do not talk about Commando. We see it referenced as in we see footage. Like Stallone would do Rambo 2, I would do Commando. But again, not really talked about. So we don't really talk about at all. Like a lot of movies are not even. Red Sonja's never mentioned. Conan the Destroyer's never mentioned. Raw Deal's never mentioned. Commando, it's not really talked about. The Running Man, never even mentioned. Predator isn't talked about, which was strange. Like you don't have Arnold talking about Predator. Because when the movie came out on DVD and then Blu-ray, there was a making of, with new interviews for a good chunk of the cast, but no new interviews with Arnold. I mean, this is an opportunity to talk to Arnold about Predator. Still doesn't talk about it. Doesn't talk about Kindergarten Cop at all. Talks about Twins with Danny DeVito, which is a good movie. But I mean, people looked at him more as an action hero. That's why it's like Predator's not talked about. Total Recall's not talked about. Like, you're going through his career, you're not talking about Predator or Total Recall? Of course, Terminator 2 is talked about. Last Action Hero is pretty much how the critics didn't like it. James Cameron had called Arnold, how you doing? How was the weekend? And Arnold just said terrible. It was like the first time he heard Arnold depressed, and how he felt his deep blow to his brand. And then Arnold going to James Cameron about True Lies. There's a little bit of him talking about Stallone and how he needed an enemy and how they would go back and forth. And I like Sly's line, well, in your movies, Arnold, you could fight a dragon and get just a Band-Aid as a result. They do talk about the first Terminator, but it's like, even then, it's stuff you already know. Jim and Arnold having the meeting. O.J. Simpson up for the Terminator, and Arnold up for Kyle Reese, and James Cameron's like he would be a good Terminator. Arnold, the more he read it, said, I want to be the Terminator. So it's stuff that you already know. You're not going to find any new information. Conan, it was about before the movie was even a thing. He had met Dino De Laurentiis and said, "Why do you have a large desk?" And insulted Dino and got kicked out in less than 2 minutes. And then Dino didn't want him for Conan, but the director said, I want him. And Dino was afraid of John Milius because Milius would carry a gun with him anywhere, including the meetings. And Dino was a bit afraid of Milius. It's nice to hear Arnold talk about this stuff. But if you know a bit about these movies, you kind of already know the information. Like Twins, there's nothing about other than Arnold meeting Ivan Reitman while they were skiing, and Arnold going, "You're the Ghostbusters guy? I could be a Ghostbuster." And then just about how, successful the film was. Also during that hour, there's Jamie Lee Curtis talking about True Lies. There's Arnold, how he first met Maria Shriver with his Ethel Kennedy tennis tournament. And he did say to the mom, your daughter has a nice ass. He admits that he did say that. Which I've heard that story before, but nice that Arnold himself said it there on camera. So, I mean, that was fun. That was the hour where you get to see Arnold owning and driving a tank on his property. So, that stuff was more fun. Just the career stuff. The stuff that he skips. I don't know why Predator, The Running Man, Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, Red Heat. Like, none of that is talked about. Commando. It just felt like a lot of his career isn't, even later on, of course. End of Days isn't talked about. We just see footage. Eraser is not talked about. We just see footage. And he goes, that made over 100 million. He called Junior's success and Batman and Robin's success. I've never heard anyone say that Junior and Batman and Robin were a success. Because Arnold was talking about how he had the heart surgery. Actually, before that, Last Action Hero was a deep blow to his brand. But then, after that, I had successes, True Lies. And then he mentions, Junior and Batman and Robin and Eraser. I'm like, Junior wasn't a success. You look at the numbers, it did not make that much money. And I never heard anyone say they liked the movie. So, that was very weird. Same with Batman and Robin. Did no one tell them the information that those two weren't really successful? I mean, maybe Batman and Robin maybe made some money worldwide, to be fair, but Batman and Robin was, I would say, was more ridiculed than Last Action Hero. Maybe not. I don't know. So, and again, that stuff was kind of, the rest of it was kind of thrown under. And then the third hour, like I said, the second hour was a more disappointing because, like I said, all the stuff that was missing. The third hour was about being a governor. And what was going on in California, him that he should run. Maria told him no. And then he was going to go on the Jay Leno show, and he was going to say whether he was or wasn't. And he said he got something under the door. This is what I would say if you do it. This is what I would say if you don't. He decides I'm going to run, announces on Leno. We get to see the Leno clip. and he's running for office. There's groping allegations, but it didn't really deter. And in fact, he did go in and get elected. And I mean, on one hand, I don't really give a shit about politics, so I didn't really care. And all you hear from everybody is that he was a shitty governor. And I think they sugarcoat that quite a bit. I mean, I wouldn't say it was an entire puff piece, but if someone said it was a puff piece, I don't blame them. There's a bit where, people talk about how his impatience worked against him, and he would admit that his mouth was his helped him a lot, but his mouth could be also a big liability. But it's one of those things that I think painted a little bit of a rosier picture of his governor time than was reality. I guess based on what everybody else has told me, because I didn't look into it, I didn't really give a shit. I don't live in California. I don't care what happens in California because I don't fucking live there. But I didn't. Whenever you ask someone, they go, "He was a shitty governor. He was a shitty governor. He was a shitty governor." And so I thought it was going to be much more hard hitting. I don't know why I thought that, because they do mention the housekeeper stuff. That I was surprised, but I'm like, that should be mentioned. It was mentioned about how the politics put a strain on the marriage, and he pretty much doesn't go into details as to why he went with the housekeeper, but that he did, and like they were at counseling, and the counselor said, "Maria wants me to ask you something. Did this really happen?" And he said, "Yes." It makes sense why Maria is not interviewed. It would have been interesting to hear from Maria Shriver, but I can see why she wasn't interviewed. None of his kids are interviewed. Pretty much Arnold tells about how, it's his fault and he's sorry. And, I mean, I bought it. It felt sincere to me. He's like, there's no excuses, no bullshit excuses. Just my fault. And I mean, that was at least nice to see a little bit of that humbleness about it. But yeah, movie wise, like, okay, no, they don't talk about Jingle All the Way. They barely talk about Terminator 3. The only time it's referenced is he asked what Andrew Vagina, like, you think I should run for governor? And he's like, you're fucking crazy. And also, I sold the thing for Terminator 3, and if you don't do it, then I'm going to have to sue you because I'll get sued. And so he had to delay office. But no one gets into the talk, the diatribe of that most people say. Most people say that the worst mistake he made was going into politics. And they make it seem as if he was successful. Yeah, he got elected. If that's all that equals success, then I guess he was successful. But the rest of it was a failure. But they make it seem more successful than it was. I'm not saying they say nothing detrimental about that, but again, I thought it was more sugar-coated than it should have been. And no, they don't talk about a single film he did after office. They don't talk about The Last Stand. They don't talk about Killing Gunther. They don't talk about Escape Plan. They don't talk about any of those movies. Because really nobody talks about those movies. And I like The Last Stand, but nobody talked about the film. And everything he did after, which was pretty much, other than the Expendables, pretty much shit. Terminator, they don't go into those. We see footage, but Do they go in any of those movies? No. And that's the thing is, if you think about it, his governorship was a failure. And then his movie career afterward was a failure. Maddie, Aftermath, sadly The Last Stand, because that's the last film he starred in that I liked. I did his steep. Like, you may like these films or not, but no one ever talks about these films, and I don't know, just looked at as kind of failure. He never regained what he had success, or how do I put it? The way people looked at Arnold in, say, 1995, and then after True Lies and stuff. For the past at least 10 years, the general public has not looked to Arnold like that since then. I mean, hell, I'm just being like from 2013, being nice. Because I think, well, maybe with the governor, he did get elected and people were maybe a bit more upbeat and hopeful, but it's just one of those things where, I don't know. I would say the last hour was semi interesting because, like I said, I knew jack shit about the politics, but at the same time, because politics in general don't interest me, it's kind of this 50-50 thing where, okay, I don't. Someone who's much more knowledgeable about what happened in California, I would love to hear their thoughts on this and how much was sugar coated, and it'd be interesting to hear their opinion on it. Like I know I have a friend named Effrey. I know he back in the day he's told me a bit about how Arnold was shitty. This is way back in the day in politics. I would love to hear his opinion on this stuff, but yeah, it's one of those things where it was interesting to watch, just to see all the footage put together, old footage, and Arnold in his like nice place with he's got like a little pet pony and donkey that goes into the house, and they didn't drive in a tank, and just a big massive place that he lives in. It's just not something I would watch again. I would say if you're an Arnold fan, it's worth a watch, but there may be things that are like, man, they skipped that, or I don't know. Some may call it overstuffed puff piece. That's up to you. Was it worth one watch? It was for me, but again, I don't know how much it would really stick with me either. But with that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later.